Hello, class. It's Miss Roberts here, and tonight we're going to talk about public speaking and how it relates to small group communication. Let's begin. All right. So we'll discuss different types of group presentations, speech apprehension, considerations for the audience, brainstorming, outlining, delivery, and visual aids. All right. So we're familiar with public speaking in regards to one person speaking in front of an audience. You might have taken a public speaking course yourself. Now we're going to expand what you've learned in those contexts and other presentations you've done in a small group communication context. Now we have three different ways that groups give presentations to others. First, there is a panel discussion. So it's a group discussion with the audience that informs the audience about an issue, solves a particular problem, and encourages discussions of pros and cons about an issue. There's usually a monitor to keep up with time and to keep up with pacing of the speech. Whereas we have the symposium presentation where the speakers will prepare short speeches prepared in advance and they have a little interaction with the participants. So it's a little bit more like your traditional speaker and audience type of situation versus a panel. There's a back and forth. And then you also have a forum presentation where the audience can participate in communication. Similar to a town hall meeting, you will see a political candidate do. And then the politician or the speaker is questioned by the audience. So we have panel discussion where we have a line of panelists, they talk about a particular issue, the symposium where we have the speakers just talk to the audience, and then we have a forum discussion where there is a question answer format with the speakers. But regardless if you're speaking by yourself or others, let's address how to ease speech apprehension. Now, many of us do have apprehension about speech, and that's normal. But one of the first things you can do is use that nervousness to your advantage, study and practice more to help ease those fears, understand the rational or irrational fears you may face while giving a presentation. So some of the rational fears we may have is maybe low performance, a lower grade, but sometimes you might feel that making one simple mistake will ruin the whole speech for you and everyone else, and that's simply not true. So try to control the controllables, and for some of the more irrational fears, try to take a deep breath, take a sip of water, and just redirect those irrational fears to the controllables that you can't control. Maintain a receiver orientation, be more audience centered, and cater your speech to the audience interest and provide clarity for the audience to make your speech interesting. Keep a positive attitude and use visualization techniques. So just making sure that you've done all that you can to prepare, you have support of your teammates and provide support for your teammates. You should be just fine. And preparation does mean research your topic thoroughly, organize your topic, make sure that we are speaking properly, we are practicing our presentations ahead of time, both on our own and together, and more than likely you will succeed. But also think about the audience as well. What is the purpose? Why they're listening? So they might be listening to gain information from you for in the class. There might be a persuasive element to your presentation as well. Also think about and be considerate of demographics such as cultural identity, gender identity, age, demographics, generation, different group member, different group memberships, how many people are in the room, and are they there to agree and listen to what you say? So, for example, you might go to a public forum or a public speaking event because you are in support of what the person says, or is in an audience of mixed attitudes, beliefs, and values. So some of the audience members may agree with what you're saying, but some of them may not. So how do you craft messages for those who fall on that spectrum? With audience analysis through polls, surveys, and even more informal means such as reading the body language of your audience, you're able to identify your remarks that are pertinent to the characteristics of your audience and what they may need from you. But the next step is brainstorming your topic. So I will provide some of the parameters for your subjects, but not only do you have to choose a topic, you have to choose a topic that you agree on together. So this is where, especially in projects such as public speaking and putting together information and speeches, this is where a small group can bring the advantage because you have all your different ideas, you have the potential for greater amount of ideas, and you can collaborate on choosing an idea for the topic, taking personal inventory, talk about interests and hobbies, talk about experiences, and bringing those to the group as they share their experiences with you, creating categories, listing the first 5 items that come to mind, doing internet searches, and the next step is deciding which topic, a combination of topics you will agree and choose to work on. One of my favorite things to do, especially in class, is to have students list the subjects we already know about and list the subjects we want to learn more about. So this way, we're honing in on topics that interest us, either something that we're really comfortable knowing about or subjects that we're more curious about. That curiosity will fuel us to pursue this topic and do our research. And in my experience, topics that students and groups connect with helps in delivery. So, for example, the delivery style doesn't seem dry, or does it seem like, oh, I'm just up here because I'm up here. They are enthusiastic, and that enthusiasm is infectious. So, in addition to organizing your speech and making sure that you're including visual aids, questions, and techniques to make it interesting throughout, you being interested in your topic can do a lot more as well. So, listing the topics that you already know about or the subjects you want to learn more about can help you in delivery because you have that enthusiasm and that interest in the topic, which is translated better in the delivery style. So for more informative speeches, that's when you become the lecturer of your topic and pretty much you're dividing your presentation into 3 to 5 main points. So think of what we do for college essays, but of course you're saying the information. So you can use the topical speech format, take one topic and divide it into 3 pieces, have a strong introduction and preview, include that hook and attention getter, that credibility and relevant statement, and your thesis. In conclusion, the overall idea is to recap those ideas and make them memorable, and transitions in between body sections will not only help keep you on track and stop you from rambling, but also help the audience connect one idea to another. Internal previews lie in the introduction, so they will sound similar to today. I will talk about A, B, and C, and the internal summaries will be that recap. It may seem repetitive to you because you are engaging in this topic, you're researching it, and you know what you're going to talk about in your recap. For our audience that's hearing for the first time, however, those transitions, internal previews, and those internal summaries, which will be, which will sound like, in conclusion, I just talked about. Finally, we will wrap up by saying A, B, and C. So having those recaps will remind the audience of what you talked about. So in the introduction, you can gain the attention by using questions, using a quote, make sure to cite any quote or stat verbally and in the paper or outline, using a short story, now a very short story, or a fact or a stat. Establish the importance of the topic, preview the thesis, and talk about the central idea and main points in any topic, any information that you use from another source, make sure to cite. The body section has 3 to 5 points, and you're going to use your transitional words and phrases to transition from one section to another. Remember, it may seem repetitive to you, but as an audience, we're able to keep track of what's going on or the points in which you'll understand. So sometimes it's in sequence, first, second, third, or topical, taking one topic and dividing it into 3 pieces. And of course, this is where the bulk of your research is going to be. So making sure that you cite your source both within the outline or paper and online, and online or in person, depending on what you are. But you want to say something like according to such and such said, such and such states. So that can be the author, body of work, and or organization. Then in conclusion, like I said before, is a recap of your main points. You remind the audience of the topic, and this usually mirrors the central idea or thesis of the speech. You can also provide a takeaway or a final thought the audience can have, or a final quote. And if you use a quote or stat at the very end of your speech, make sure to cite the sources verbally and in text. One thing I also want to mention about transitions in a small group. So, of course, with your speeches, you'll take your topic and divide it into pieces and come together as a group. So you're treating one speech with a bunch of individuals, but working on one accord. So also to reflect this, you want to have transitions in between speakers. So for example, one person can say, now that I talked about A, such and such, your partner or teammate will talk about B. This also provides that smooth transition from one point to another. And if the audience doesn't know you, then it remind the people of who they are within the group. So it's really important to not only transition and introduce the topic, but to introduce the next speaker as well. And say, for instance, going back to introduction, if you're the first person to speak, you want to introduce yourself and everybody in the group. And if you're in the conclusion section, provide that recap, and of course, mention everybody in the group. So it's this one speech, but you're all working on one accord. What's up over here? So extemporaneous speaking is, you might have heard this before in other public speaking classes, but it's a speech delivery style that is planned in advance, but it's presented in a direct and conversational manner. So this way you're able to plan your speech in advance. You can use note cards in my class specifically. And in essence, if you performed, in theory, if you performed your speech in different contexts and in different times, the content would pretty much more or less be the same, but each performance would be a little bit different. You might cater it to the audience. You might answer different questions. You might use a different tone and cadence to reach different audiences. But each performance is a little bit different with extemporaneous speech delivery style. And then we want to factor in delivery. So with online delivery, there are some differences than in-person delivery. But there's also some similarities. So first of all, think of your appearance and make sure that the appearance is appropriate for the occasion, whether it be formal or is it informal. You might not want to leave it to the more formal side, but it just depends on the situation. Make sure that your movement and posture is on one accord as well. So, for example, I am sitting down, presenting online. So, just because you're online giving a presentation, that does not mean that you have to, that doesn't mean you don't have to take that into account, especially if you're standing while giving a presentation. So, I'll give you an example. So, if I'm at my desk, I can't just give the lecture laying down and slouching like this. I'm getting out of the frame here, but also it's very important to stay within the frame. So up in the frame where I see fit. You can also be a little bit closer, but make sure your face is in the frame. There have been many speeches, and I'll give a demonstration right here, where they're like this. Or I'll also demonstrate making sure lighting is important for online delivery. I'm in the dark right now. I've seen people give speeches in the dark. Pardon me, you can see me a little bit. Let me turn the light back on. So make sure you have proper lighting. I have my little microphone so I can be heard, making sure that that you can try to the best of your ability have a distraction for your environment. So whether you're in person or online, making sure that you have posture, looking at the camera. That was one thing during the pandemic that I struggled with was looking at the camera. So making sure you look at the camera, have proper facial expressions depending on the tone of your speech, and eye contact in an online context will be looking at the camera. Now, if you're in person, you're going to scan the room and make sure you're not just looking at one focal point. Because looking at one focal point means just that. You're looking at one thing and not the audience. You want to make eye contact with everyone in the room. It may seem scary at first, but if you keep practicing it, you should be just fine. Then we also have our vocal delivery. This is a speech, a public speaking speech. So our voice is very important. So the volume is the loudness or the softness of your voice. And then you have your speech rate, where it's the speed of the words that you say. Now, you want to make sure that you maintain a moderate pace, not too fast, not too slow, unless you're being deliberate. So sometimes we slow down our speech rate for emphasis, but make sure to do that on purpose. And the pitch is the highest and the lowness of your voice. Articulation is pronouncing all parts of the word. It's not cutting off syllables or putting different sounds at the end of words, making sure that all of these work together in your favor to make your voice sound clear and organized. They also have different areas of articulation we have to be careful of, such as deletion, leaving out parts of a word, substitution, replacing parts of a word with an incorrect sound. In addition, adding extra parts to a word or slurring, which can happen when we speak too fast. That's happened to me many of times, where there's an overlap of one word with the beginning of the next. So just be careful practicing your speech, practicing pronunciation, and making sure we speak at a moderate speech rate can help alleviate a lot of these errors of articulation. Visual aids are really good. So this, I'm using visual aid to talk to you right now. This can include models, videos, audio files, diagrams, pie charts, line charts. It can run the gamut. So using visual aids, make sure they're clear, they're easy to see, and of course, if you have any questions about visual aids, let me know. But just making sure that you agree on which visual aid to use, who will show the visual aid, and making sure it's simple for you to operate. The simplicity, you want to keep them simple, make sure they're visible to the audience, making sure that you're able to work, they'll be visually interesting, appropriate to make your point, and you be able to control your visual aid at all times. With technology, it's a little bit harder because sometimes technology can fail us, but to the best of your ability, just make sure that you have an idea of what to do. You shouldn't be working the visual aid for the first time. Have a mastery of it so you don't have to worry about the content and the speech. Now, when we think about outlining your speech, just thinking about and going back to a previous point of organization, Make sure that you figure out as a group what your presentation is going to be about, how to break up those sections of the speech, and then, of course, have your note cards ready, have your portion ready, but not only practice as a group, but practice as an individual as well. So everybody knows their part very well. Everyone knows what everyone else's part sounds like. And it seems like you're working on one accord and you sound prepared and good. All right. So overall, that is the spiel and information about public speaking for group communication. If you have any questions, please let me know. And thank you so much for spending time with me. Have a good evening or day if it's the daytime where you are. Alrighty. Bye.